Welcome, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Today, we're joined with the legend himself, Jesse Leach of Killswitch Times of Grace. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you. How are you, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Getting over it's 2025, and we're in a new year, and time goes way too fast nowadays, dude.
Agreed. I agree with that. I usually am not the guy to
Mhm.
say typical things like that, but you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Time has been flying by. It's really weird. It's like we're in a time warp.
Yeah, it's been crazy because especially when it comes to the music scene, like everything just stops in December and kind of November. Like everyone's already out of office emails is all you're getting back from everybody
Right.
at that point. It's just done. And then January starts and it's pretty empty. And then it's always, what is it right now? The second, I think, week of January. Everyone comes back. Everyone drops.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I'm good to go. Tours announce, songs announce, and yeah, it's definitely a reconvening every year, and everyone's inbox is too flooded. And
And I gotta say, man, the older I get, the more time is seemingly moving quicker, which is,
yeah,
it's typical, but it's kind of true, dude.
well, dude, it's how old are you? You're not that old.
46.
Oh, dude, you're chilling. You're fine.
Yeah, I actually feel pretty damn good for my age, though. I
Mhm.
take pretty decent care of
Mhm.
myself. I feel better now than I did in my 20s.
Really?
Honestly. Yeah, because I just took control of my health and
Mm.
stopped killing myself slowly.
Mm. Well, dude, that's. I mean, I'm glad to hear it. And dude, you sound great. Like you sound as good as you did like freaking 2002, man. Like it's crazy.
I feel like I sound better, dude.
Yeah.
But thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Well, of course, it's cool because I grew up listening to a lot of like the 2000s metalcore era. That was like my thing. You know, I was like, oh my god, I'm stuck with this, and now I'm a core kid for life. Growing up with like, of course, Killswitch. You know, All That Remains, Bullet, Trivium, the whole nine yards,
Yeah.
and seeing you guys as Killswitch again evolve over so many years into current day, where you guys just announced brand new record, new song, last since 2019. Was that the last
Yeah.
record?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez, man, that was the olden days, the before
It
times.
feels like it. Yeah. Pre-pandemic is definitely now the old days for sure.
Yeah, it's that's the olden days. Did you do anything particular during the pandemic that like kind of, I don't know, like how'd you pass time? Everyone passed time differently during it.
A few things. I retreated into the woods very monastically and sort of disconnected from the world.
Okay.
I did a lot of hiking, a lot of nature.
Oh, nice.
I put out an ambient record and did a lot of meditation and just, yeah, just having time to watch the seasons change, which may
Mm,
sound really funny to some people, but when you're touring nonstop all the time, there's something quite magical about staying still and watching the
mm,
seasons change. So very sort of meditative, monastic,
mm,
as much as I could throughout all of the crazy stuff that we saw happening in the world. But
mm.
I did have moments of beauty during
That's
that time.
awesome. Does that help with inspiration when it comes to writing, like lyrically or obviously, melodies or anything like that?
Oh yeah, the nature is my muse, absolutely. Contrasted with what goes on in the world and the ugliness of humanity is the beauty of nature and solace and quiet.
Mm,
My favorite place is in the middle of the woods by myself, sitting somewhere and just being
mm,
still and listening and being and just there's something about that just sets me right and puts me in a good headspace. I can deal with all the other stuff.
mm. Do you live in the middle of the woods currently? Like, is that your everyday, like just
Yeah.
surrounded by nature and
So I spent 5 years in Woodstock, New York, which most people know because of the festival.
right?
It's a little town surrounded by the mountains, but still very, you could still go out to a bar and a restaurant and go see a
Mm,
band. Where I live now, currently, there's nothing. My
mm.
closest neighbors, I can see them just through the trees, but outside this window behind me is a mountain and a stream and a couple of bald eagles nest nearby. I've seen coyote since we've been here. I've seen porcupine.
Mm.
There's a family of fox that are nearby, and we're in the middle of bear country as well. So
Oh shit.
middle of the Catskills on a river in the forest.
Hmm.
Amazing.
That's a vibe. I mean, that must be nice not having super close neighbors. If you're, I don't know, do you track at home or is it all in studio? Because if you're tracking at home, having no one around must be also quite refreshing because you're not worried
Yeah,
about.
so all of
Yeah.
the projects outside of Killswitch, because with Killswitch I track with Adam. specific studios, but I've been doing guest vocals and helping bands with demos, and I
Mhm.
do it all in this room right here. This is my new studio room. It's only about 3 months old, but out
Awesome.
here, yeah, there's no, the only sound you could get is if I open that window, you'd hear the river. Other than that, nothing. At night, it's so quiet. People who come visit from the city, it
Mhm.
freaks them out because there's just nothing.
Oh, there's no like just noise. There's no sounds of
The
cars.
river is the only thing you'll hear. You'll barely hear cars. There's not many people that come through here at
It's
all. And
peaceful.
the road is a good quarter of a mile that way.
Hmm.
It's
That's
great.
cool, man. That must yeah, that must make it so you can be very easily inspired, creative, and also at peace at the same time, which is not the common, I think, thing for many musicians. Usually it's like on tour, writing on road, go home for 2 seconds in the city, and there's noise everywhere. Like you never actually get quiet to like just be
Right.
like, let's write some music today.
Which is why sometimes it takes me a while to write because I can't do it on the road. I've tried.
Hmm.
I've tried writing on the road, but I'm so focused on either the show, obviously,
Hmm.
or interviews or interacting with fans or going out to see the sights, because I don't like to stay in the dressing room or the bus. I like to go out and move and
Right.
exercise. So when I get home after a day or two, that's when it all starts to, my creativity just starts to well up. So
Hmm.
it's nice to live where I can disconnect and no one's knocking on my door. I don't hear car horns and sirens, none of that.
Hmm.
It's really nice.
Do any bears knock on your door though, or like just not?
Thankfully not, and I haven't seen any
Okay.
bears yet over here, but at our last house, we had a 300-pound black bear walk right through our front yard. And I love it. I think it's great. I love bears. I love nature.
It's
I'm not afraid.
right.
Black bears are fairly easy to navigate. They're not like brown bears or grizzlies. They're not super aggressive.
No.
They're mostly just like chubby opportunists that want to pick
Mm.
in your trash or eat berries.
So
They're not.
they're like big puppies.
They are, but I would never pet one. But yeah.
Okay, I got you. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Well, when it has again being in that environment, like again, you guys just released the brand new track. I think it was like a month ago or so. Which again, amazing, great comeback track. It's cool because it sounds so much like kind of all the eras of Killswitch combined. Like you guys have the big melodic bridge and the big melodic kind of chorus moments, but then also a bit of a heavier edge with kind of the verses and all of that. Did you guys have like a different approach going into this new record or writing, or what was the outlook or the vibe, I guess, for this one?
Yeah, there was no real like sort of conversation as to how to tackle this, but I think all of us deep inside had the idea of we really want to make sure that this album, first of all, after it having been so much time between the pandemic and then
Hmm.
getting back on tour and wanting to promote, Atonement, which didn't get its due. So
Hmm.
that's a good 4 years there between the
Yeah.
pandemic and getting back on the road. So we're aware that there's been a gap. And also, when you're this late in your career, either you put something out that you've bled for or don't bother. That's kind of the philosophy with us.
Right.
So there was a lot of quality control. There was a lot of discussion and a false start on my part as well, like lyrically. The quality control on this was the highest it's ever been.
Awesome.
But also on top of that, I think a big factor was getting together in the same room and actually jamming together and
Hmm.
being for the first time in I've got to say 20 years, like drinking some beers, listening to some riffs, and then starting to piece
Right.
together a song and watching those four guys like create
Right.
together. And then when I felt the urge, I would jump in with my microphone and
Hmm.
try some things out. But it was a lot of observing and writing.
Hmm.
And that, we only had 3 or 4 sessions of that, but that energy stuck with me.
Right.
So when I went to approach these songs, I could sort of picture us in that jam setting. And I think that really sort of brought us back in a sense to why we even started doing this,
Hmm.
but also pushed us forward knowing that, you know, again, at this stage in the game, we've got to ante up. So I think that's kind of what happened. And you do hear, I think, us pulling from all of our influences, and including bringing in some more heavy
Hmm.
stuff. Like The Fall of Us is sort of like a death metal song in many ways.
Hmm.
And then you've got Broken Glass, which doesn't sound like anything we've ever done.
Hmm.
And some of the lyrics even went darker and more aggressive, more angry, more frustrated.
Hmm.
But I just think it was a natural progression and also just a reflection of where we're all at now in humanity. I
Hmm.
think that frustration, anger is bubbling underneath the surface for all
Hmm.
of us.
Because yeah, I was gonna say too. I love that you mentioned you guys actually got in a room because I feel in 2024, 2025, especially after the pandemic, that is so kind of uncommon for modern musicians where everyone's used to just, all right, guys, here's the demo file. I cooked it at home.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to add to it, great. If the if the drummer feels like actually recording, great. If not, here's the program drums. Like that's kind of the new meta. And vocalist, here vocalist, here's everything else. Lyrics, vocals go and come together. But it must be really cool too, I guess, working with Adam since because obviously he's such a legendary, not just musician, but also like producer, where you guys get to be all in that room together. And I'm assuming kind of also hear things, instantly record it, and then hear it back in real time as a group. But that must be a very unique combo because not many bands are able to do that as much. If they're just jamming with
Yeah.
their friends. Yeah.
It's funny you say record and listen back. Dude, we jammed, and the only recording we did was an iPhone sitting on top of an
Really?
amplifier pressing play. And mind you, we're in a studio. We
Right.
had the means to do so,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if it even occurred to us just drinking beers, hanging out. And I think that that vibe stuck. I think
Mm-hmm.
it did. I think taking the sort of professionalism and just throwing it out the window and getting back to basics, like how we started, which was in Joel's bedroom. I remember, I would drive the 70-mile drive from my house in Providence, Rhode Island, out to Western Massachusetts to be at Joel's house at 11 a.m. Joel's mom would let us in. We'd go up. Joel would be just getting out of bed, throwing on a cap,
Right.
plugging in the amplifiers, and it's go time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it felt. It felt like we were back in Joel's bedroom, just jamming with beers. It was cool.
That's cool. That's a good vibe, and that always will reflect, obviously, in the music, and you'll reflect in that kind of natural progression of you guys kind of bringing it back to the good old days of like how you guys used to do that, but also modern days, and obviously your experiences and you veterans at what you guys do. I mean, obviously, Killswitch in terms of the modern metal scene, especially the 2000s metalcore scene, like you guys never lost being like the goats. Like if there was like the top four of that era, like Killswitch was never not in that conversation. You guys always had that spot all the way till now and continuously, man. That's crazy.
Well, thank you for saying that. But I think it'd be remiss not to mention the behemoth that is Howard Jones as well. Him at the helm, really took what we started out as sort of like, I'd say fairly underground, when
Hmm.
that first record is not commercially viable. Lavage's Breathing was when we started to lean into that, but End of Heartache to me is when that band just blew up into the stratosphere.
Hmm.
So, I can't not mention that legacy, and to be able to be a part of the legacy with rotating members and we're still at it, that's
Hmm.
unreal. Like
Hmm.
on paper, it shouldn't work, but it
Right.
does somehow.
Well, and it's great having the perspective too, because again, obviously you did vocals for the start of the band, and then obviously for the rest of the band after Howard left. But then making that so it's not like Killswitch now has another new vocalist. I feel like that would have probably made the band lose that momentum after
Yeah.
of like here's another one. And I mean modern day too, vocalists so fast evolve. It's crazy. I've never seen, particularly in the metalcore scene or like the deathcore scene. It's like I miss a year of lore, and all of a sudden it's like new update, new vocalist, and I'm like, I can't keep up half the time. So
Yeah, it's interesting,
yeah.
man, how bands can operate on that level.
Hmm.
It's some of the magic just and no knock to anyone who's had to do that to survive, but like I'm lucky to be part of a band that's even had the same lineup since 2012. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't imagine rotating members. It's got to be tough.
yeah, man, it's cool. Well, I know you mentioned Howard, and of course you guys did the track, the Signal Fire, right? How is that process? Like, how is that coming together? Because I think, especially as a fan of Killswitch and like seeing that in the scene happen, it's like both dads came together, and like made the coolest thing, took the kids, to like Disneyland and Chuck E. Cheese. Like, how is that collaboration started?
I
Yeah.
felt it was important in my heart, and I think I just got to a point where, those guys had to work some stuff out internally between them and Howard, a
Mm.
lot of unspoken stuff, which I respect highly that they kept it out of the public eye.
Yeah.
It was just they had to just settle some things.
Yeah.
And once that was done, and he started up again with it was at Devil You Know at the time, which
Yeah.
turned into like the Torch. I'd always like admired him. I've always thought he's an incredible vocalist. I would even take it back to even before Blood Has Been Shed. He was in a band called Driven,
Hmm.
and his band used to play with my band, Corinne. And I remember the first time seeing him sing and
Hmm.
being like, and scream, and being like, this guy's he's different.
Right.
He doesn't sound like anybody else that was doing it at the time. And back then, you're young. We didn't really know each other that well. And respecting him as a vocalist, but not really knowing him, right?
Yeah.
So when it was Water Under the Bridge, and he started to show face, and he came out to a show in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the first time I got to hang with him and like
Mm.
actually like talk to him, which led to an entire evening of us hanging hard. He doesn't drink,
Right.
but I was drinking. And
Right.
I got enough, liquid courage in me to like sit him down and like look him in the face and be like, dude, you know what, man? I got to tell you this out of respect for you. Like, I've never had to sing anyone else's material.
Mm-hmm.
I was like reluctant to do that when I rejoined the band. I was like, oh, this is awkward. Like, I didn't write these lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I was going to connect with them, but it became such a huge inspiration to me. And Arms of Sorrow was the first song that really hooked me in. And I told Howard, I was like, that song is what brought me in. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you are great at what you do, and I need to tell you to your face. People have tried to divide us and compare us, and I have so much respect for you. And
Mm-hmm.
then within a half hour, he's like, show me Light the Torch demos. And I'm like, dude,
Right.
this. I was like, Devil You Know was good, but Light the Torch, this is, you're shining in this.
Right.
This is really cool. And then the end of the night, we're arm in arm, like singing old school hip hop songs together, like became friends. And
Right.
then from there, it was like, okay, so he's back. He's part of the legacy. He's part of the family. He was in London doing press while we were opening for Iron Maiden. I knew he was going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, we invited him out. Like, let's just hang with Howard. As we're walking to the arena in London, I look over and I was like, dude, you should do Into Heartache tonight, like on your own. Are you cool with that? And he's
Right.
like, yeah, let me just listen to it because I haven't listened to it for years. I was like, cool, you got a couple hours, man. It's you. Just get up on that stage and
Mm-hmm.
do what you do. It'd be good for everybody.
Right.
So then there's a picture of him online with us, and that just the wheels started turning. And as I was writing the Signal Fire, which comes from the scene in the Lord of the Rings where they're lighting the fires on top of
Oh,
the
okay.
mountain.
That makes sense.
And to me, it was like this call to arms.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a song about unity. I'm like, dude, why don't we get Howard?
That's
Like, it's
perfect.
perfect. The song is about unity. It's about like asking for help. And the other back end of this story is this is pre-vocal surgery. I
Mm.
was having a hard time because I was singing on polyps for about 10 years, according to the doctors. And singing on broken vocal folds for 10 years. Making of Atonement was when it all went to shit.
Mm.
And I was having a hard time hitting simple notes.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam's like, something's not right with you, dude. So within like 2 days of that, we had Howard flown out and he jumped in the studio. I had to be quiet. I sat there and listened to him record Signal Fire. I went home,
Mm-hmm.
went to see the doctor. Doctor's like, bad news. Put a tour on hold,
Yeah.
album on hold. You need to sit and be quiet. We're going to pump you up with a bunch of drugs. Hopefully, there's something we can do for you, which led to me 3 months of complete silence and vocal surgery and total, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this anymore.
Wow.
So interesting timing of him coming in and literally
Mm-hmm.
get the Signal Fire was lit and Howard came in and sang the song. And in my mind, it was like worst case scenario, I'm done. He's already on the record. Maybe he just finishes the record up and I pass the
Wow.
torch to him. So that's the backstory to it all. But
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, I was able to continue on. But Unity, man, he's part of the Killswitch family, and
Mm-hmm.
Adam and him have a record. I can't wait to hear it. I have not heard it.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
waiting. I'm waiting. I want to like finished product done and I want to check it out. But
Right.
I know Adam said to me he's going to make Howard do all the things he wanted Howard to do in the old days, and it's going to be exciting for a lot of Howard fans for what
Right.
those guys cooked up. I can't
I
wait to.
could, as a person that's worked with many vocalists as the instrumentalist, I can understand that lingo of I want, when you get the vocalist, you're like, do the things,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
on, the huge baritone choruses, come on,
Well, Adam's thing was like heavy. He's like, you've
oh,
done Light the
okay,
Torch and W know. He's like, and I know what he's done. I can already, knowing Adam, he'd
right.
probably make him sing over like blast beats and stuff. So I'm sure it's going to be something.
Dude, that's so cool, and it's so rare to find a band, especially like a band that's been going on as long as Killswitch Engage, where like everyone like is part of that family, like you said, and vibes, and there's no contention, there's no weird feelings with each other. You know what I mean? I mean, let alone being a band with each other for what
Yeah.
was it, 20, 25 years plus now?
26 now as of this year. Yeah. 26
Jeez, man.
as of
Like,
2000. So 99 was when we really, actually, yeah, 99 is really when those pieces started to be put together. 2000 is the first release, but I want to say it was the end of 99 when we really got in the same room and became Killswitch
jeez,
Engage.
man. And the fact that you guys still don't all hate each other is a magical, like being a band for 25 years. touring together, just dealing with each other is, I mean, they're your family. Like you have to be family with your band, or it's not going
Yeah.
to happen. Like they're
I don't understand bands that aren't like that. I
yeah.
can't imagine being in a touring situation with people you don't like. I
Hmm.
mean, granted, we don't always hang out all the time, and when we're not on tour, we can go months without talking. It's fine, but
Right.
put us all in the same room. Like before the show, the five of us are in the same room. We're hanging out.
That's
Like we're pals.
rare. That's rare nowadays. That's so crazy to think. Most everyone's
I love
split
it.
apart. Yeah, like doing their own
I think it's a
thing.
good vibe, and like telling jokes, or we'll throw on some Cannibal Corpse or some Decapitated
Nice.
or Wu-Tang Clan or Weird Al Yankovic. It depends what mood we're all in.
Hmm.
And people are drinking, we're in and making it's a fun vibe. So once we hit that stage, it's like the five of us are on the same page. We're good.
That's amazing, man. I'm glad you guys are able to have that relationship again. It being so rare, and especially with Howard too, because like you guys as Killswitch as like a whole having that legacy in the metalcore scene. Very few bands are still going, obviously from the 2000s and like like thriving and striving like you guys are. And it's cool to see just that. All right, it's Killswitch, and even sound wise, like you guys always evolve, but it still sounds very familiar. Like I get transported back into fucking middle school instantly whenever I hear any Killswitch track, Alive and Just Breathing, or I throw on End of Heartache, or even the new stuff. I was sitting here nerding out with the chat and just being like, oh dude, just smile as soon as you hear like those big melodic choruses, that it's just like that right there, boom, Killswitch. As well as again like the really cool verses you guys throwing down in that track. It's very, again, as a fan, when there's so many bands that unfortunately I think disappoint over time, it's very exciting and relieving to have a band like you guys that actually celebrate, care about each other, and obviously care about your fans. So thank you for that, because it's not common nowadays, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too because without the fans, we're nothing. We're
Yeah.
nothing. And we all know that. The career has done this. We've always maintained a sort
Mm,
of status quo, but we went from thousands to hundreds in the audience. There's been dips. I feel like in Incarnate there was a bit of a dip,
mm,
and maybe some people would have been disappointed with some of the tracks that
mm,
we've put out. But like at the bottom line is a genuine care. Like we genuinely love what
mm,
we do. We don't take it for granted, and we absolutely are indebted to our fans. Like that's a vibe that I'm proud to say all five of us feel that exact
mm.
same way.
Yeah.
If you're standing outside the bus and I'm coming out after a show and a shower, I will make time for you.
Mhm.
99% of the time. The only time I've ever not done it is when I'm actually sick, when I'm
Yeah.
afraid to sort of like throw up on you or like whatever.
That's a
But we're all, and
yeah,
if
that's
someone's on the
fair.
bus
Mm,
and they missed the crowd or they came out before the crowd came, someone will come on and say, "Hey, there's people out there, autographs." Like, go. Like, we
mm,
always make time because those are the people that are keeping us going. And
mm.
it's an honor,
Yeah.
really.
That's amazing, man. And again, you guys, I'm sure, have seen many generations of different fans over the years. Of course, like the people that grew up the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, like people that are growing up now with TikTok, and like 578 TikTok's a thing, like doubt is a thing now, where people will grow up and hear that like a Killswitch track for the first time and be like, "What's this? I don't know what metalcore is, mom." I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my Timmy, like 13, 10-year-old voice. Like, I don't know what this is, but this is cool. It's labeled metalcore,
Yeah.
Killswitch. Like, that's sick. And it's cool to see that that era particularly, which again I'm very biased because I grew up with that era, never really died. Like, it just evolved over the years. Like, you even see now like Trivium and Bullet are doing obviously like the Poison Ascendancy, and like that's a crazy fucking tour to see
That's a
now.
great lineup in general, too, man.
Yeah.
It's fun to see bands like that doing it. But you're right. We may have like dipped here and there, but it's maintained enough for us to like live off this and
Mm,
still feel like we're successful and have
mm,
people show up to our shows.
mm.
It's great. But I love seeing, Bullet Trivium, Shadows Fall making a return.
Yeah.
Like it's fun that our peers and people that we all sort of grew up together were still going. And Trivium's a bit younger, but I remember meeting Matt when he was a kid,
Mm,
when the first record was out, and he was so sweet. And he was like, "Thank you for making Killswitch. I wouldn't be here without it." And now, like Trivium, they're like masters of their craft. Like I remember watching them side stage in Europe, I don't know, a couple of years ago,
mm,
and just being like, these guys are like they've honed their craft to the point where like they're a brand. They've
yeah.
just got it so locked in. There's very little room for error. all four of those guys are like machines, and the live show was great. I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
wow. And I remember watching them at, Lupo's back in, I don't know, what was it, like 2002, 2003, the
Mhm.
early stages. And these like little guys on stage and now like men, masters of their craft. So yeah, big props to Trivia.
Yeah, dude, they are Matt too. He lives in Orlando, around here too. Nicest dude ever. He was one of the first people that when I came to Orlando, he didn't say, "Hey, what do you need help?" He just said, "I got you. Here's a list of all the food places. This is all the vibes." But it's like he's that kind of guy, and I was confused how he was able to do that because he's also probably like one of the craziest hardworking guys with a full
Ever. Yeah.
family.
I
Like,
don't know how he does it, dude. He's a maniac. I have a
yeah,
lot of respect for that guy. But you're right, like and I don't spend time with people who aren't like that, like down to earth people. And
mm-hmm.
he's definitely one of the most genuine guys. We've gone out to eat together. We've shared beers.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I see that guy, it's automatic, just like friendly vibes.
Yeah,
And to me, that's great. Your measure of success isn't just in, how much money you make or how many people you play in front of, but
yeah,
it's how you treat people. I think
yeah.
that's huge.
Well, are you surprised as a person, obviously the person as well as part of a band that was so predominant in that 2000s era that like era kind of like, even though obviously it's changed, it never really went away. That people still are like, yo, I fucking love 5/7/8's huge choruses and my breakdowns. Like, is that, as a person that lived it, is that something that was, you guys were expecting this to be something that genre of music goes on forever, or like what was your
No,
thoughts
not at
on it?
all, man. Not at all. I grew up a hardcore kid and, I never expected to be doing this full time. I thought for sure I'd be stuck at a job I hated
Mm-hmm.
and just doing hardcore shows on the weekends. Like, it's crazy to me, man. And I look back on, you're seeing a resurgence of new metal. People thought new metal was
Yeah.
dead, and now Limp Bizkit's back, Horns, like they're playing bigger. I think Limp Bizkit's probably playing bigger places than they did before. Like they're
Oh,
huge.
new metal
It's
is
fun.
insane
It's
now.
fun though. It's like I like that, and the Bay Area thrash scene never died. Like, so to me, if we've gone this far, which we're now considered classic metal because we're 25 years old and older,
Classic metal.
if we made it to this point where like we're classic rock or whatever,
Right.
I think we're gonna be all right.
Yeah. Well, because now people are growing up, like I said, whatever, with TikTok or whatnot, and it's like they'll still listen to Metallica because like in some way in the mainstream, you'll find Metallica if you are like, I don't know,
Of
a
course,
teenager
yeah.
now. It's impossible not to, right? And probably Slayer and Iron Maiden in some capacity, Judas Priest, Anthrax, etc. Right? But now, like you said, kind of, it's like the old school heavy metal, even though it's not old school, is like 2000s metal, which is so weird as a person that grew up in the 2000s myself. And that was the stuff that, I was like, oh, damn. I still grew up listening to like thrash and whatnot in the, thanks to Guitar Hero and whatnot. But it's weird hearing kids are like, oh, dude, my first album was like a Bring Me album or Architects album or like a Periphery album. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
it's like, that's the new generation and the music's evolving so quickly. But that generation in the 2000s, you guys, I think everyone just made really good music in the 2000s. So like, it didn't stop influencing. It never really
Yeah, well,
stopped.
I think there's a certain soul to it because you're talking pre-internet, right? Like
Yeah.
the internet was just coming up. There wasn't that oversaturation. There wasn't access to music the way that there is now, where I think there's a lot of extremely talented musicians and vocalists, some that could, technique wise run circles around me.
Mhm.
But I think the difference is there's an artistry, there's a DIY mentality minus the internet, because the internet now is such a massive tool
Yeah.
for people to make a living or just be noticed. Where back then, you had to show up to the club 3 or 4 times a week,
Yep.
get in a van and go. Like you had to show up
Hmm.
and be at the shows on a regular basis. The internet was you showing up to a show and playing.
Right.
And a lot of those shows were like 15 scene kids that were in the know that saw the flyer in that record store or heard it through a friend of theirs that lives in a squat. Like it's
Yeah.
so different back then. And I think because of that grit and determination and that tenacity we had to cut our teeth and to hang up our own flyers and to, wheat paste stuff and do graffiti and stick our band stickers, like
Right.
all that stuff was the old school way to market yourself. There's a spirit to that whole Northeast scene was engaged in that
Hmm.
pre-internet. So like our songwriting, our lifestyles, the kind of people we are, it's all because of
Right.
that generation, which is hard to describe to somebody who doesn't know what life is like without the internet.
Yeah, kids, you're like 3 years old now, and you get like an iPad, I think. Like it's.
Wild. Yeah, it's wild. And what it does to your attention span too is wild, which I think
Mm.
changes the music,
Oh
like
yeah.
a lot of the short attention span music now where, I look at a band like Neurosis was one of the first sort of aha moments in my life where
Mm.
I found like a new religion. When I first heard Neurosis, it was like they didn't sound like anybody. Their references of where they're coming from musically was so far beyond my grasp with very heavy artistic themes. And then they had 12-minute songs where I'm just sitting there baffled, like, what is even happening?
Mm.
And from there, it was like, what else is there? If this is like a band,
Right.
how many other bands that are like this? So I went down this long list of bands back in those days that Man is the Bastard, just weird experimental punk crust D beat.
Mm.
Like the heavy for me wasn't necessarily just metal. It was a whole like punk hardcore
Mm.
subgenre thing that was going on. And some of those guys wrote like Grief. They wrote like 8-minute songs where the riff hits every 30 seconds. Like it's just so slow. And
Mm.
nowadays metal, like there's some metal where I listen to it, I'm like, ah,
I,
what just happened? 7 changes and polyrhythms, and I don't even. And I'm like, ah,
if you, I don't,
I admire it, but it's like
yeah.
jazz. There's a certain a degree of like I can't touch
Yes.
that. It's
It's
crazy. What is that?
it's a lot more production based too nowadays, obviously, and it's especially like everyone can kind of be, if you're an instrumentalist, like a bedroom producer, like thanks to technology.
Which is awesome, and I
Yeah.
applaud it, and I think it's incredible. But I guess just for me, it's just the difference between my brain and somebody who's out there playing prolific things on, a TikTok or YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
It's super cool. And I love that there's the freedom. Talk about DIY culture.
Hmm.
You can be a self-made person. You can
Yeah.
just get on the internet and do what you want to do
Just do
and not
fun
have to
metal
work
things, man.
and not have to work a shit job that you hate. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely a blessing nowadays too, and it has its obviously downfalls of the sense of like there's so many bands. Oh my god, we're like
Yeah.
even here, like I try my best with the platform we have and the cool community we have, where it's like, hey, like let's do streams and stuff where it's like only send me bands with like, and it's not like monthly listeners is the end all be all, obviously, of size of band. There's bands with 5,000 monthly listeners that could make more money than a band with 300,000 could ever do, right?
Right.
Sometimes, but it's like, send me, this, here's like a limit. Let's just find some bands that are, arguably smaller and see what's happening, because everyone now has good mixes. It's impossible. Like, I don't think there's a band that can have about it, because you can go to a guy on Fiverr, like $100, have a decent mix, decent at least. Everyone has access to recording equipment, to samples, et cetera, to production stuff, where there's such a new higher standard of modern music, and the barrier to entry though is so much easier to get into, that
Mm.
there's all these bands that like make big bangers, and you're like, oh, like that's not enough now, like even close to it. It's like
I
the
think
stand
what's
up.
important is personality.
Yeah.
I think for me, like when I'm listening to a band or if I decide to work with a band, for example, I'm looking at their content. I'm looking at the way they present themselves.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the way they speak to the camera or the way they perform to the camera if it's a video,
Yeah.
or what their video looks like, or if there's some humor in it, or like to me, it's not just making a song that sounds good, that is mathematically correct on your ears. You're like, oh yeah,
Right.
this makes sense. But like to me, it's your soul. Like, what are you saying? Like, who are you?
Mhm.
Those are things I look for as an aged sort of nerd of music.
Right.
I want to see what are you saying to me and how are you presenting yourself? What's your personality? What's your style? What's your swagger?
Right.
I like seeing that element of, because there's a lot of it out there. You can write a good song, you can put out a thing that sounds professional, it's beautiful, but if there's no soul there, there's no
Yeah.
like, what happens when it comes time for you to play a show? What kind of a show are you putting on when you
Mhm.
get out of your bedroom? That's the kind of stuff I'm looking
Yeah.
at. Like who are you
Mhm.
as an artist? What do
Yeah.
you have to say?
Well, metal's nowadays too so diverse, where it's great that you can see these bands that are arguably be more like caveman piss kind of hardcore elements, like Kublai Khan, or like Knocked Loose. Obvious, I mean, Knocked Loose just did fucking Kimmel, like did
Yeah,
a Brie in front of millions of people.
good
Like,
for all of us, man. Good
yeah,
for all of us. And those guys are they're great dudes. We
Yeah.
we we had them open for us over in Europe, and they're just class act guys, down to
Yeah.
earth. I love that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I applaud that.
Yeah.
Expand it for all of us. I feel that way about Architects,
Oh,
Bring Me the Horizon, bands that blew up.
mm,
Instead of hating on them in a scene, go, yeah, good, because it's good for all of us.
yeah. Especially because the pipeline of like influence is so crazy. Where like I have people on the show now that are like, I have this guy that's 22 years old or something, and a few others, like these modern bands, and they're like, I grew up because of I got influenced by Periphery too, and I'm like, that's crazy that's like your growing up
Your
album.
Periphery is your gateway. That's
Yeah,
a high
that's
standard playing. That's
and
amazing.
and then seeing like I had Mark on the show and he's lovely and he was talking about like, yeah, dude, like we like Periphery, like we love Killswitch, we love Meshuggah, we love a few other things. It's like, oh, so a guy that listens to P2 can also go to Killswitch, Meshuggah, which then again that just keeps trailing and trailing back to influence and influence and influence, where like the pipeline of influence just doesn't end. Even though you'll listen to, we've had this band on the show, Marar, which makes the most crazy, I don't even know, 2035 chaotic music I've ever heard in my life. And it's like, oh, that somehow still trails back to Killswitch, and then obviously, before then and before then, like that's crazy.
Well, we all
Yeah.
stand on the shoulders of each other,
Mhm.
and we all pull influences from each other. It's just how do you put your signature on it?
Yeah.
And I think it's just, what the great thing about it, anybody who's ever been backstage at a metal festival,
Mm.
there's a mutual respect. I don't care if you play black metal, death metal, hardcore,
Yeah.
go to catering and hang out. Like most of us are just friendly. We're just hanging out with each other.
Mhm.
There's no competition. There's no like posturing or someone trying to be tough or putting up attitude. That's very rare.
Yeah.
I feel like most metal heads and hardcore heads, it's
Mhm.
community. I love it.
Mhm.
And I've met people that I would have assumed because of their persona
Right.
that they would be sort of like standoffish or hard to get along with. And turns out like some of the nicest people you ever meet,
Mhm.
especially in extreme music. Most death metal dudes are awesome to
Oh yeah.
hang out with.
Yeah. They're just chilling. They're like, dude, I love music and blast beats, and I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah,
It's like,
drinking beers, and then we all talk about our mutual love for folk music or something. Just
yeah.
it's stuff we would not anticipate. Or 80s. Usually, I find this with a lot of bands. Like 80s pop
80s.
is a gateway for all of us. We're all just you get drunk and listen to shitty 80s music, and we're all happy.
Well, in the modern metal space, especially the more produced bands, like 80s is massive, and I love hearing a lot of like these synthwave, synthetic, but also kind of like just indie, old school elements in a modern, low tuned, hilarious production, where
Yeah.
it translates, and it's cool to see just again how the times continue on, and you get the influences from there, but also
I
like,
remember when In Flames started to do that, and people were kind of clowning on them, and I was like, I applauded it.
oh yeah,
I was like, dude, that's awesome. Like Cloud Connected, you can't
dude,
fuck with that
yes,
song. That
no,
song is incredible. And I like that they sort of opened the gates for a lot of bands to bring in those keyboards.
yep.
Nothing wrong with keyboards, dude.
Mhm.
People, I'm not a hater. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
You,
I,
you,
lo I love hearing new things. I love hearing fresh sounds. And I listen to all of it. Like you mentioned electronic music. I love certain types of EDM.
hmm.
If you are a person that just has your mind closed and you're like, I only like this, you're missing out on so
Yeah,
much music and so much stuff to pull influences from,
right. Well, 90% of new modern metal stuff is every guitar is layered with a synth in some capacity, even if
Yeah.
it's not like a in your face like kind of thing. It's there and it's layered and it's beefing everything up, which is really cool to hear. The synthetic elements combined with the natural, and then you obviously have way more raw natural bands that are more like
Yeah.
hardcore-esque, that are just like guitar, drums, bass, the vocals, like
Yeah.
this is
I
all
think
you're
if I could say one old crotchety old man comment, it would be this.
okay.
The overuse of bass drops and China hits is the one thing that every once in a while I'm like, really?
Really? Trash can snare, yay or
This
nay?
is what you're doing? And again, not to knock anyone, but
Mhm.
you've heard it so many times, just like I'm sure the chorus hits and here comes the hook.
Yeah.
After a while, you're like, switch it up, dude.
Yeah.
Stop hitting the bass drop
Right.
every time you do a breakdown.
Well, it's way funnier nowadays because bands abuse it so hard, where it's just
Oh, hard.
they'll just shove it. It's not even a breakdown moment. It's just blank space.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's
Yeah.
What I mentioned this. What about the trash can snare? This is an important element. Yay or nay, Jesse?
I think if you use it sparingly,
Okay.
it does have dramatic effect.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sparing.
Yes.
But not. It's not every. If we're blasting with the trash can snare, we're not vibing this.
Then
This
you're
is.
then you're treading on Saint Angerland where the snare just sounds awful the entire time.
It's it's funny because like in a lot of modern deathcore bands, they're trying to. It sounds like 2000s deathcore, and it's just ding
Yeah.
ding like nonstop trash can snare. But it's just fun and meme. I don't know if you listen to this band, this slam band, Peeling Flesh, where they
Oh,
only breathe. It's only breeze. There's no action. I don't think there's lyrics. There can't be, and
yeah.
it's just trash can snare with pinch harmonics and dun dun dun, dun 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 dun. Amazing, amazing.
That's fun.
Yeah, mindless fun, and it's cool that metal can be that now because I feel like the tens and obviously earlier like it's like no metal is just this or just that, and now it's like you'll have kids growing up listening to lo-fi beats, deathcore, metalcore, hardcore, whatever the fuck. Like it seems like there is less. I'm gonna use that sparingly. Less gatekeeping than there has been in
Yeah,
a
I
long
hate
time.
gatekeeping. I hate it. I
Hmm.
don't think there's any place for it in art and creativity. You shouldn't be telling someone what to do or how to be.
Yeah,
If someone is young and they're a noob to like a
yeah,
style or a genre, encourage them, point them
yeah,
in the right direction. Don't shut them out. Like it only benefits the scene. It only benefits all of us if
yeah,
there are newer people coming in that are excited. That's the thing. If it's a genuine excitement,
hmm,
let them in, man. What the hell?
yeah.
Like I hate that. I was called a poser when I was younger. I had to deal with all that
Okay.
shit and hardcore and punk and all that. You're supposed to be a liberated sort of like free thinker, and
Right,
there shouldn't be any rules. But yet, when you get into a scene, it's clicky, and then there's so many rules. Like
right.
if you're straight edge, you got to be this. If you're punk rock, you got to be this. If you're,
Yeah,
into grindcore, you have to be this. Like, get out of here. Break all
yeah,
those walls down and just create and be sort of expressive and
hmm,
be free. The
right.
freedom to just be a new person that doesn't really have a clue. To me, like I wouldn't be where I am if an older generation didn't say, "Hey, check this 7 inch out," or
Yeah,
someone gave me a cassette tape with a bunch of bands on it and said, "Check these guys out." Like,
hmm,
come on in. I love that. Now I will always be that guy.
yeah,
If I see younger fans that are stoked on something, and I met this kid once years ago.
hmm,
He was super into Linkin Park, and he just
hmm.
discovered Killswitch, and like
Nice.
Linkin Park was his first gateway band. I'm like,
Yeah.
right on, dude, Linkin Park. That's awesome. Like, have you ever heard of like this band? Or have you ever checked out? I even dropped Candiria on him, which is like an obscure
Okay.
band that not a lot. And that kid wrote me years later and was like, because of you, like I play guitar in a band, like that
Damn.
Candiria CD you told me to get changed everything. Like, that's awesome. Now dude's
That's
in a band like touring.
yeah. I mean, we live in the age where Lincoln Park is back too. Like you just mentioning Lincoln, like that's
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm not gonna comment on that because I don't really know all the ins and outs of it,
gotcha.
but I also feel like
Yeah.
carry on the legacy.
Yeah.
If anything,
Hmm,
the one positive of that is Chester's legacy
hmm.
can live on through those songs being sung and spoken because he had a lot of very important things to say
Yeah. Yeah.
about the world, about
Hmm,
politics, about compassion, humanity. If those songs are still being put out into the ether, to
hmm.
me, that's the bottom line. That's
Yeah.
good.
I
His legacy is
like
going.
out of the 2000s that I mean them obviously a lot of the new metal bands Korn, but Linkin Park I still see as probably for the modern age of kids growing up, even that are like I don't know probably teenagers now, they're still like that's the gateway band somehow.
Well, they're important too,
Yeah.
lyrically. Like
Oh
if
yeah.
you really, because I'm not one of those people that was a huge like, oh, I dig Linkin Park. But as I got older,
Hmm.
you sort of look back on bands that maybe you just ignored because you were so focused on whatever.
Right.
But I would say the past 5 years, my wife, who's 12 years younger than me,
Hmm.
she was the one who was like, "Have you ever really sat with what Linkin Park has been saying?" I
Hmm.
can't remember the name of the album, but
Hybrid Theory,
no,
mediocre.
it wasn't Hybrid. There is the white one where
Oh,
what's it?
minutes. Oh God, Hunting Party. No,
I
minutes
don't
to
know.
midnight.
I'm gonna look it up so I can
Okay,
I can show that I.
I just spewed a bunch of text. Yeah.
But
Uh.
for me, when I heard this record, it was like,
Hmm.
wow, these dudes are like talking about very important minutes to midnight. Yeah, I think
Minutes
it
to
is
midnight.
minutes to midnight.
Okay.
Given, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, Shadow of the Day. Great lyrics, dude.
Hmm.
I was finding myself getting emotional. Like Chester was telling us something.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you don't know what you got till it's gone, you know? I
Yeah.
look at Scott Weiland the same way. I look at Chris Cornell, breaks
Yeah.
my heart the same way. These guys had these powerful, interesting artistic messages woven throughout their music,
Hmm.
and you don't get it really until they're gone. And you're like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
he was trying to tell us, like, dude, Black Days, Soundgarden, oh my God.
Soundgarden, dude.
All on Black Days, what a powerful song now that he's gone.
Mhm.
So yeah, to
Yeah.
me, Linkin Park is important, a band that should
Mhm.
be revered. And for better or for worse, you know, the legacy lives on. At
Yeah.
least those words are being put out into the ether.
Oh, 100%. Do you have any bands, like newer bands, where you might get inspired, like lyrically or even like just vocally, that even for you, you're like, damn, man, like this is different. This hits different. This is kind of cool. Like this, I'm vibing with this.
Yeah, I'm gonna say one that people might not anticipate from me, but a band called High Viz.
Oh,
They're
okay.
from England, and it's punk rock. It's raw. It's it mixes like melodic hardcore with punk. There's spoken word in it.
Hmm.
It's not perfect. His pitch isn't perfect. He yells.
Right.
The lyrics are impassioned. It just sounds different from most things that are going on right now. And I saw them open for Speed, who's a
Speed is
known
sick.
the flute and
The
hardcore. You know,
flute, the flute
yeah,
core.
people know him because of that, right? That's what. But those guys are awesome, killer live band.
Hmm.
But High Viz opened up for them, and I watched their set. It was like we were on tour with Iron Maiden in Australia. I
Hmm.
got off stage, and I knew that they were playing, you know, across town.
Right.
So as soon as I got off stage, towel off, get to the club just in time to watch High Viz take the stage. Sitting side stage watching that band and just chills,
I have
chills,
to check them
chills.
out. Damn, man.
The passion that that singer has, and also what I like about it and why I love punk rock is it's not perfect music. It's
Hmm.
not buttoned up. It's not, you know, auto-tuned. It's not,
Hmm.
you're hearing humans plug in and just give it their all.
Hmm.
And what he's saying in the lyrics, it just, there's a song called Trauma Bonds,
Hmm.
which was one of my gateway into that band. He's talking about growing up and it wasn't easy and it was difficult and how some of the people that are attached to you in your life, there's a trauma bond there. It's not healthy. And like to have a punk song like that speak to a whole generation of people who probably live with abuse or have an
Hmm.
abusive parent who's an alcoholic or has a friend of yours who you have to like peel off the pub every night and you're worried he's going to die in his own throat. Like just that ugly shit.
Yeah.
That song deals with that.
Hmm.
And you can feel the conviction in that guy's voice. Just a raw, beautiful band, High
Right.
Viz. Love 'em.
Dude, I have to check them out. That's you. You sold me on that. I know you mentioned
Yeah,
Speed.
so if
Yeah.
you mix like, I don't know, a bit of Iggy Pop, a bit of
Okay.
Dag Nasty, maybe some Fugazi with just like, I don't know, kind of their own unique take on it. And like one of their songs, their newer song singles, he's just doing spoken word.
That's
It's not
fire.
even really melodic. He's just talking about life in the streets. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's brilliant.
As a vocalist, what do you think kind of gets you more of like a whoa, melodies or lyrics?
I can't have one without the other. Look,
Gotcha.
you could be saying nothing and I'm into it.
Hmm.
Like Sigur Rós, for example, love Sigur Rós. I don't
Hmm.
know what he's saying. It's absolutely beautiful. But if I know what you're saying and I can relate to it,
Right.
that's going to create a relationship between you and I, where I'm going to be your fan for life if you're speaking to me. You
Damn.
know, there are bands out there that I would even say, you know, not necessarily something that I've gone through, but just admiring the poetry. Like
Right.
Opeth is a band that I admire so much. Like
Hmm.
Blackwater Park to me is a benchmark in
Banger record.
songwriting genius, sonically, but lyrically.
Hmm.
You know, he's a great poet. The
Hmm.
way he puts words together, I admire that so much because to me, I'm in love with the written word. I'm a poet first and foremost. I wrote poetry and got made fun of it, you know, from the age of 14 on, like,
Hmm.
and I still write poetry on a regular basis. So to me, if you can craft a song and put words together in such a way that create a response or reaction from somebody, that's incredible.
Hmm.
But if you don't have the vehicle to deliver it, it's kind of tough. So
Yeah,
you kind of need both. But
that's
if
fair.
I were to go with one thing, if you're not a perfect singer, but you're saying something incredible, I'd go with the lyrics over the sound of the voice.
Makes sense, man. Well, Jesse, dude, I've spent enough of your time, dude. Again, chat. Killswitch Engage, This Consequence. Go check out the new record coming out. I'm excited. We're definitely gonna be checking that out. I'm first record in Jesus 5 to 6. I don't know the exact math of the last record, but 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, 2019, so 20. Yeah, so yeah,
Around 6 years.
5 years. Yeah,
Killswitch Engage. Yeah. Jesse Leach. Go show him the love. Again, check out Killswitch. Check out Times of Grace too. Jesse, any other fun updates or spices you want to throw for people that you can say, that you can share, that are shareable, right? That aren't unannounced things, I guess.
Yeah, so basically we're just going to be on tour for the next couple of years. So come check us out. Hopefully wherever you're watching, I know Europe's on the map, US tours are on the map. And hopefully the year after that, we'll be getting more worldwide. But if I can say anything to anybody out there, first of all, thank you for supporting Killswitch. Thank you for caring. Thank you for helping us be a band for this long. And then lastly, my closing word would be fight against the division and the control that is coming down from the powers that be. Realize that we all have so much more in common than we do differences. Live in compassion and understanding and empathy for each other. Make the world a better place. It starts with you. Your little small acts of kindness and compassion make a huge impact. Stop arguing and bickering on the internet. Get out there and be a better person, and don't be a dick.
Don't be a better person. Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
I love Jesse of Killswitch Engage. Show them always love. Jesse, thank you so much for coming to hang out. Appreciate it, man. And if you need anything else, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, dude. Have a good one.
Have a good one, brother.